Shaka Zulu, the great king of the Zulu kingdom. The Zulu kingdom, sometimes referred to as the Zulu Empire, was a monarchy in the southern Africa that extended along the coast of Indian Ocean from the Tugela River in the south to Pongola River in the north. The kingdom grew to dominate much of what is today known as the KwaZulu-Natal and South Africa. The rise of the Zulu nation under Shaka Zulu. Shaka was the illegitimate son of Senzanga, the chief of the Zulus. Shaka was born 1787. He and his mother Nandi were exiled by Senzanga and found refuge in the Mtwetwa kingdom. Shaka fought as a warrior under the Jobe and then under the Jobe's successor, Dingswayo, leader of the Mtwetwa kingdom. When Senzanga died, Dingswayo helped Shaka become the king of the Zulu after Dingswayo's death at the hands of the Zwide king of the Ndwandwe. Around 1818, Shaka assumed the leadership of the entire Mtwate Alliance. In 1816, Senzanga died and was succeeded by Shaka's half-brother, Segujane. However, Shaka got military assistance from Dingswayo, and he attacked, defeated and killed Segujane, and made himself the true heir of his father. He organized a strong army among the Zulu and divided it into 8 regiments with Shaka himself as the commander-in-chief. In 1818, Dingswayo was killed by Chief Zwide of the Ndwandwe, and Shaka had to act. He took charge of the Mtwetwe chiefdom, killed the heir to Dingswayo, and became the commander of both the Mtwatwe and the Zulu army. Shaka defeated Zwide's force at the Battle of Jokali Hills near River Muhalatuze and became the most powerful ruler in the region. He conquered the neighboring communities and established extensive Zulu kingdom. The kingdom extended from Drakensberg Mountain to the Indian Ocean border by the Pongola River in the north and the Tugela River in the south, as we earlier seen. The origin and the growth of the Zulu kingdom was also due to the fertile soils, good climate, and reliable rainfall, which encouraged the growth of maize, millet, pumpkins, mentioned but a few, to feed the growing population. Presence of the fresh pasture encouraged the rearing of large herds of cattle, goats, sheep. Shaka also assimilated and conquered communities who served in the army and agriculture. He established a centralized administration where his army and servants were promoted on merit. Shaka Zulu, the great king of the Zulu, raised the Zulu chiefdom into an empire. He initiated many military and social, culture and political reforms, forming a well-organized and centralized Zulu state. The most important reforms involved the transformation of the army through the innovative tactics and weapons, and the showdown with the spiritual leaders and the witch doctors, effectively ensuring submissive of the Zulu church to the state. Another important reform was to integrate the defeated clans into the Zulu kingdom on a basis of full equality and with promotions in the army and civil service becoming a matter of merit rather than due to circumstances of birth. The alliance under his leadership survived Zwide's first assault of the Battle of Ginkokili Hill in 1818. Within 2 years, Shaka had defeated Zwide at the Battle of Mulutuze River and broken up the Ndwandwe Alliance, some of whom turned began a murderous campaign against other Nguni tribes and clans, setting in motion what became known as the Difangani or the Mufekani, a mass migration of tribes fleeing the remnants of the Ndwandwe, fleeing the Zulu, the fierce king of the Zulu, Shaka. The death toll was never been satisfactorily determined, but the whole region became nearly depopulated. Normally, the estimate for the death toll during the period range from 1 million to 2 million people. These numbers are, however, controversial. By 1822, Shaka had conquered an empire covering an area of around 80,000 square miles. He had turned out to be the great king the area had seen. Shaka rising to his most in the Zulu kingdom. The rise of the Zulu nation under Shaka Zulu. So we're saying the difficult background transformed Shaka into a highly intelligent, ambitious and skillful young man. He became determined to assume the legitimate position of power as a heir to the throne, and he transformed the Zulu nation into what it is today. With his great tactics and ambition to see Zulu grow into an empire, Shaka did lots of reforms and achieved numerous successes in trying to see the Zulu nation grow into an empire that it was by then. Shaka made all conquered people tribes to learn the Zulu language, culture and customs. This created a cultural bond of unity and harmony, which was referred to as the Amazulu. Shaka was non-sympathetic to those who opposed him. He ordered his army to kill whoever was disloyal to him. In the military, Shaka created a strong standing army known as the Impis that fought all the battles that expanded the Zulu nation. It was composed of all able-bodied youth and ordered them to live in special camps under military command known as the Indunas. The Indunas were the commanders of these regiments. He encouraged the physical fitness among his warriors by exposing them to tough military training, drills, military displays, mocks, battles, and then dances, which kept them ready for war at all times. He divided his army into 8 regiments, each headed by the military Induna. Each regiment maintained a cattle kraal and a granary and a garden to be self-sufficient in food supply. Shaka discouraged some initiation ceremonies such as circumcision for military and efficiency. He created women regiments who cultivated food crop in military camps and served as Shaka's spies. These ladies used to spy on the loyalty of various chiefs and indunas. He created women regiments who cultivated food crop in military camps and served as Shaka's spies on the loyalty of various chiefs and indunas in the kingdom. He never allowed his warriors to marry until they were reached 40 years old. When they were retired, that's when they were allowed to marry. So the youthful stage and the youthful years were all for fighting and defending the nation. However, the retired force formed a reserve force which could be recalled for service at any time you can imagine. Shaka discouraged the use of traditional long throwing spears and introduced a short stabbing spear known as assegai. The assegai was effective at close range fighting. This is one of the great innovations that Shaka invented in the Zulu kingdom and helped him to develop the nation into an empire. Shaka introduced the use of cow horn formation attack, where soldiers and warriors could form into a circle and enclose the enemy. They surround the enemies in semicircular form and destroyed them so easily. He discouraged his soldiers from using wooden sandals and encouraged them to fight barefooted for easy mobility and noise. He paid his army both in active service and retiring veterans, where in terms of cattle, land, foodstuffs. He increased the size of his army by recruiting the conquered youth into military service. Shaka created military settlements, camps such as the Gibathungu, Bulawayo, and Mobamba, Pukunza, Mbelembele, and Isikelembe. By the time of his death in 1828, his expansion policy had created trouble characterized by frequent wars, murders, endless wars, famine, and insecurity, which caused a period known as Mofekani, where different neighbor tribes left Zululand in search of peaceful areas. The achievements of Shaka during his reign as the Zulu king: he created a spirit of nationalism by creating a regiment system which served as a unifying factor and strengthened Zulu resistance against the British. He strengthened Zulu state by assimilating the conquered people into the Zulu society. All the conquered people around were assimilated and were forced to adopt to the customs and norms of the Zulu people. He encouraged agriculture and animal rearing in his kingdom, which assured food security. He is also remembered for creating extensive Zulu empire, which lasted up to 1887, when the British annexed it for colonial rule. He conquered and defeated the neighboring hostile tribes such as the Ndwandwe under the Zwide, the Shangani under the Shongani, and then the Sosho or Sotho under the Moshesh. He managed to maintain harmony, unity by forcing all the conquered people to adopt Zulu language and culture and customs, as we said earlier, and this was referred to as the Amazulu. He created female regiments that produced food for the army. Shaka created a strong standing army which was organized under the age regiments for defense. Shaka made himself the commander-in-chief, responsible for all the military affairs in the state. That's why he was able to maintain and grow his empire. Shaka's military leaders were not allowed to hold meetings without his consent. He was always there. Shaka created military camps where his army lived for effective control. For example, the Bulawayo, Mobambo, Pukunza, and Usikelembe. Shaka is also remembered to have killed King Zwide of the Ndwandwe people, which helped the Zulu to get rid of the powerful enemy. He replaced traditional leaders in Zululand with the military indunas. These were now the commanders who provided efficient administration to the kingdom. He introduced new fighting tactics. He is remembered for this so much, like the fighting of barefooted, cow horns encircling the attack, the enemy, and then the short spear known as the asege. This helped him to strengthen his army and fight most of his enemies and grow Zulu into a big empire. The fall of Shaka. Shaka was succeeded by Dingani, his half-brother, who conspired with Mulangani, another half-brother, and Mbomba and Induna to murder him in 1828. Following his assassination, Dingani murdered Molangana and took over the throne. One of his first royal acts was to execute all his royal kin. In the years that followed, he also executed many past supporters of Shaka in order to secure his position. One exception to those purges was Mpande, another half-brother who was considered to be too weak to be a threat to his throne at that time. Thank you for sticking with me, and that was the story and the history of our great leader, Shaka, the Zulu King.